Tonight, a planned and ruthless murder. A Scottish criminal is jailed for life for his part in an international gangland hit.
It was a planned and ruthless murder. It was an execution.
Also making the headlines, the Scottish Government is to ban the use of combustible cladding on high-rise buildings. But those living in buildings with existing cladding say urgent action is needed to help them.
In sport, a huge night in the Championship as Kilmarnock could seal promotion with a win over Arbroath.
And a cat who turned up on an oil rig after going missing has disappeared again after being reunited with his owner. I'm Emma Cameron in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. A Scottish gangster has been jailed for life for an execution described by the judge as a planned and ruthless murder. Christopher Hughes will face a minimum of 25 years in jail. He lured a reformed Dutch criminal to his death in the Netherlands. Martin Coke was shot 8 times in the head and body outside a sex club.
Hughes was a senior member of a crime gang with global connections. He was arrested in Italy under a European warrant. Although the murder was in the Netherlands, it was investigated as part of a wider Police Scotland inquiry into gang activities, as Susan Ripple reports.
Martin Coke was a convicted murderer turned crime writer. He'd set up a website exposing criminals in the Netherlands. And on the 8th of December 2016, he was shot and killed outside a club near Amsterdam. Today, the man who lured him to his death was sentenced to at least 25 years in jail.
It was a planned and ruthless murder. It was an execution. You intended this harm. You determined to do this. That you determined to do this is illustrated by your persistence in pursuing this plan even after the earlier attempted murder failed. The earlier attempted murder contributes further to the seriousness here.
And this CCTV footage shows that attempt on Coke's life on the same day. Christopher Hughes is with him as they leave a hotel in Amsterdam. A gunman approaches, attempting to shoot Coke in the head. Nothing happens, and he runs off. Christopher Hughes had been involved in organised crime for almost 7 years, with connections to Colombian drug cartels and the Italian mafia. He was involved in the importation and supply of cocaine, firearms and money laundering. It was an apparent confession to a fellow gang member turned informer which led to his downfall. In evidence during the trial, the informant said he was asked to set up a meeting between Hughes and Coke. Martin was lured under the pretence it was to discuss advertising for the phone company MPC, which Hughes was involved in. Despite the murder happening in the Netherlands, it was investigated as part of Police Scotland's Operation Escalade, a global investigation which has now resulted in gang members being jailed for a combined total of more than 100 years. Susan Ripple, STV News.
The Scottish Government is to ban builders from using combustible cladding on high-rise buildings. The legislation will prohibit the use of such materials in buildings with a floor that's 36 feet or more above the ground.
But those whose homes already have the cladding say urgent action is needed to help. Some say they're feeling fearful and facing financial uncertainty. Louise Hosey reports.
The dangers of combustible cladding on buildings were brought to the public's attention following the Grenfell Tower tragedy. 72 people died after the material on the London high-rise caught fire and spread rapidly. Now the Scottish Government has introduced legislation banning such cladding on new buildings.
We want a complete ban on the most combustible materials, and I think it's in line with the other work that we've taken forward. This is actually the third set of changes that we've brought in since Grenfell. You know, not just looking at cladding, because obviously the fire safety issues affect things like escape routes, alarm and sprinkler systems as well. This continues that progressive, incremental change, and we hope it's going to give people a lot of confidence that buildings that are constructed from now on will be as safe as they possibly can be.
Since 2005, cladding on high-rise blocks in Scotland has had to either feature non-combustible material or pass a large-scale fire test. The legislation before Holyrood removes the fire test option for any building with a floor that's more than 36 feet above the ground. The Fire Brigades Union say while it's good news, it doesn't do anything for people living in homes which already have the material.
It's vital that there's legislation put in place to remove that cladding. The Westminster Government seems to have taken an England-only approach to begin to remedy this. The Scottish Government have initiated a study into the 700 potentially affected properties, but we're awaiting the results of the initial 25 case studies that have been conducted. Would like to see that the costs of these remedy measures are borne by industry and not by the individuals that are living in those properties or by the taxpayer.
Abhijit Kadwe is one of hundreds of homeowners whose building has combustible cladding. The father of two has been so worried about his family's safety, he's now moved them all out of the property.
I would give anything to come back to the property. It's just, I think the Scottish Government needs to do more. They have already taken the first few steps, but I would say baby steps. But I think it's time that they get their act together and start getting things moved forward as soon as possible.
The Scottish Government says this legislation will help in further minimising the risk of deaths and injuries from fire. But those living in existing buildings with the cladding say urgent action is still needed to stop them feeling trapped, fearful and facing financial uncertainty. The cladding changes in Scotland will be introduced at the beginning of June. Louise Hosey, STV News.
A man accused of murdering his toddler son told police he had no memory of the child's death. The High Court in Edinburgh saw a video of Lukasz Czapla being interviewed hours after the youngster was found dead, during which he said he didn't know how 2-year-old Julius had died in his home in Muirhouse in Edinburgh.
Czapla's offer of a guilty plea to culpable homicide was not accepted by the prosecution. His legal team have offered a special defence of diminished responsibility. Vanessa Taff was in court.
2-year-old Julius was found dead in his father's house. The court heard how the pair had shared pizza the night before. The jury were shown evidence of how Lukasz Czapla had sent a text message to his ex-partner at 2:25 a.m. In it he said, "You and me making a kid was asking for a tragedy, and I don't have a way out of this situation anymore. I'm getting out of here. There's no life for me here anymore. I'm taking Julius with me because I'm not leaving him with no father like I was left." The jury also heard of text messages Mr. Czapla sent on the night that he was looking after his son. In those, he discussed the medication he was on and feeling foggy. The court were read transcripts of a phone call he made from prison. In that, he said he was close with his son, but also described how he might spend the rest of his life behind bars, adding, "I couldn't calm myself down, I must have flipped, and I can't remember." Mr. Czapla had taken a concoction of medication and was described as having suicidal intent. He had multiple injuries on his left wrist, which the doctor said were no more than 48 hours old. He said they were also evidence of deliberate self-harm. Czapla has pleaded not guilty to murder but has admitted a number of other charges. The trial continues next week. Vanessa Taff, STV News at the High Court in Edinburgh.
Other stories across Scotland now, and Rangers have confirmed the former player Andy Gorham is in hospital receiving treatment for cancer. The Ibrox club say they are in regular contact with the 58-year-old and his family.
A man is due to appear in court again later, charged with causing the death by dangerous driving of a Scottish woman living in Canada. 30-year-old Erin Rioxo from Trinent in East Lothian was knocked down by a car in Toronto last week. The driver, Ertug Diricolo, fled the scene.
Calmac says the main ferry linking Arran to the mainland will be out of service until the 3rd of May. The Caledonian Isles broke down on Sunday and is currently in Troon for repair. The operator says a secondary vessel will continue to run a reduced timetable out of Ardrossan and that lifeline traffic such as food deliveries are being prioritised.
More than half of all Scots are believed to have contracted coronavirus within an 18-month period. The Office for National Statistics says 2.7 million people had the virus between September 2020 and February of this year. Meanwhile, in the past week, the number of COVID infections has dropped by more than 30,000, with 1 in 19 now testing positive. Some of Scotland's small rural businesses say they're fed up waiting for better broadband. Multi-million-pound UK and Scottish Government projects are being rolled out to improve connectivity with ultra-fast fibre speeds, but for some it's coming far too slow.
After lockdown led to a surge in online sales, a new free course at Heriot-Watt University aims to help more businesses boost their digital presence. Here's our political reporter, Laura Alderman.
As well as digging for victory, this organic farm in Cooper has gone digital for victory. Thanks to fast broadband in their area, they've capitalised on an online sales boom during lockdown that's now continued.
We've got even 4G on the field here, so we're really lucky. We can pretty much do whatever we want, wherever we want in terms of online, so that's been great.
We've had times where we've been set up on our laptop in the polytunnels to check all the delivery lists at the last minute, so it's just fantastic that we can have a rural lifestyle but still be really connected.
But of course, growing any online business, whether it's in a rural area or in a city, depends on having a strong, reliable internet connection. And that's something that almost a quarter of rural homes in Scotland still don't have. The Scottish Government are delivering a £600 million project with BT to provide full fibre broadband across the country. But more than 100,000 homes are still waiting to be connected, leaving businesses in rural areas like Tom's with not spots over hotspots.
Broken promises is the big issue. I work for some estate agents, and quite frankly, it's one of the first things on the list is what is the broadband speed at the house? And if it's not high enough, they reject it. Some have not moved into the rural environment because they simply couldn't. Others have had to go to the central belt or the cities because there is not the speed available in certain parts of the country.
A broadband voucher scheme and investment from the UK government might help to speed things up. But academics say rural businesses can still grow while waiting for fibre, with a new course on offer for SMEs.
There are definitely challenges with internet connectivity, and I know that these are all things on the national agenda for Scotland, but we can also help there because you can plan around that. There are ways for businesses to address that, and we would be building that into all of the growth plans that we help businesses to deliver.
Although 93% of premises now have access to super-fast broadband, connecting those in the most remote and rugged corners of Scotland remains a challenge. Laura Alderman, STV News.
Well, also making the day's news, more than 3/4 of GPs have suffered more verbal abuse or aggression from patients during the pandemic. A survey of health professionals also found more than half of those in Scotland are planning early retirement or leaving the profession altogether because of increased workloads and stress.
A man is in a serious condition in hospital after a hit and run in Paisley, which police are treating as attempted murder. The 37-year-old was on Springbank Road when he was struck by a car at around 7 o'clock last night. The silver Toyota Yaris was later discovered on fire at a nearby industrial estate.
The German national linked to Madeleine McCann's disappearance has been made a formal suspect by Portuguese authorities. Christian Bruckner was identified as a murder suspect 2 years ago, but has not been charged since. Investigators believe the convicted sex offender killed Madeleine after abducting the 3-year-old in May 2007.
The fire service is warning there is an extreme risk of wildfire this weekend. They say fires could ignite and spread easily with warm temperatures and strong winds forecast. The public are being urged to take care when enjoying the outdoors.
Still got quite a lot of dead vegetation, which is a fuel, fine fuel. It sits there. I know we've got some green growth coming through now, but a lot of the old vegetation's there, and that's got a very low moisture content, which means that if it does ignite, and it ignites very quickly in that state, that fire will spread very rapidly through it at very high intensity.
Nicola Sturgeon has launched the SNP's Council Election Manifesto. She's urging voters not to sit this one out and send a message to Boris Johnson to help force him out of office.
The First Minister says SNP councils will work with the Scottish Government to tackle the cost of living crisis. This report from our political editor Colin Mackay contains flashing images from the start.
After 2 years of online conferences and campaigns, this was the SNP leader's first in-person speech to party supporters, setting out her council election manifesto.
Tell me what's new in your manifesto, because it looks an awful lot like last year's manifesto.
Well, of course it is about implementing last year's Holyrood manifesto. Many of the commitments we made there, for example, taking council tax away from the under-22s, building on our doubling of childcare by extending that to 1 and 2 year olds, and building a wraparound system of care, making progress towards our affordable housing target. These are all policies that we need to deliver in partnership with local government. And therefore, the more SNP councillors, the more SNP councils across the country, the more effective that implementation and delivery will be.
Nicola Sturgeon said SNP councillors would support independence, but this is not an election about that. It is, though, she says, a chance to send a message to the Prime Minister.
Boris Johnson may or may not be forced out of office, though I strongly suspect that it is now a matter of when, not if, that scenario comes to pass.
Some questioned why the SNP was launching its manifesto in Greenock when 2 government-funded ferries have failed to launch just up the river.
Just about a mile away from Ferguson shipyard, arguably the biggest question mark over the competence of your government.
Look, the issue with the ferries, and I've said this before and I will say it again readily, when governments get things wrong, it's really important that they don't shy away from that. And people have heard me say that often in the course of the pandemic.
So you've got it wrong on that?
Well, look, the ferries are over time and they are over budget, and I'm not going to say anything other than I deeply regret that.
So you accept you've got things wrong on the ferries?
Clearly, the things with the ferries haven't gone right. But what I will not apologise for is the decisions we have taken that mean that Ferguson shipyard, just as you say, a mile away from here right now, is open, and that 400 people are employed there.
With less than 2 weeks until the council election, Nicola Sturgeon had a message for all voters.
To people across Scotland, please do not sit this election out.
Colin Mackay, STV News.
A motorcyclist from Clydebank who died after a crash with a lorry has been named by police. Philip Allen Buchan was involved in a collision on the A82 near Tarbert on Wednesday afternoon. The 31-year-old's family have been informed. The lorry driver was not injured. Police are appealing for witnesses. Students at Glasgow School of Art are being able to show off their work to the public in person for the first time in 2 years. Artists from across the globe are putting their work on display at the Florence Street School from tomorrow through to Thursday. The programme leader for the first-year students says he's looking forward to welcoming back visitors.
We have a wide range of practices from all sorts of areas, from video, installation, painting, sculpture, photography. We opened last year for a showcase event for first-year students, but this is the first major public excursion since COVID took over. So we're really excited to present this work to the public. Yeah.
Tonight's sport comes from Raman at Rugby Park in Kilmarnock with a focus on the championship title race.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Yes, a very good evening from Rugby Park, where the top 2 teams in the championship face each other. A win for Kilmarnock, and they'll be crowned champions and secure promotion to the Premiership. Their challengers are both, well, it's been a fairy tale season so far for them. They'll be hoping to get a positive result tonight and take it into the final weekend of the season for a straight shootout, which is next weekend. Well, this is how tight it is at the top. A single point separates the two sides with just 2 games remaining. Well, when Derek McInnes was appointed Kilmarnock manager just 4 months ago, he had one key objective, that was to get Kilmarnock back into the Premiership.
Just really pleased that when we came in January, we do have this opportunity, because there was no guarantees of that. There was a lot of work had to be done. The players deserve a lot of credit for putting us into this position. Our home record's been really strong. Nobody's won more points than us in the league since we came in January. So I'm pleased with how the players have been. Delighted that we now have this opportunity on Friday to try and overcome a good side.
It's exciting times. The games we're going to be playing, and it's a massive game. It's a massive game for the players, massive game for the football club, and this is what we've been striving for the whole season, to get ourselves in a position where we can be one game from winning the title.
Well, Rugby Park will be rammed tonight. The 3 home stands have been sold out. As for Arbroath, they have sold over 1,500 tickets for this clash.
This is a real bonus being in this position. But now we're in the position, we really need to have a go, don't you? I'm not going down there to play for a point and it's absolute rubbish. I'll go down there and have a go. And so will the team.
Well, it promises to be a cracker. Kick-off here at Rugby Park is at 7:45. Now, Rangers have been dealt a major blow. Kemar Roof has been ruled out of the club's next 3 games, with Alfredo Morelos already out injured as the sprinkler comes right over me, folks. I hope you can still see me. That means they have a bit of a crisis in attack. Here's our reporter, Ronnie Charters, who's definitely dry.
He's been the man who stepped in for Alfredo Morelos. But now Rangers need someone to step in for Kemar Roof. The striker will miss the game against Motherwell tomorrow, RB Leipzig next week, as well as the derby with Celtic in 9 days' time. Aaron Ramsey will also be out for the same period with a hamstring injury.
Of course, with Morelos already out, now Kemar out for a couple of weeks. We have less options up front, but as always, we just have to go on and make sure we embrace the challenge. The atmosphere in the group is good. We just have to make sure we pick the best team for every game.
Rangers' match against Motherwell was brought forward a day to help prepare for Thursday's trip to Germany. Although the Steelmen were happy to accommodate the request, Graham Alexander says it could have been handled better.
We wanted a decision so we could actually organise our training week differently, because obviously it was all geared up for a Sunday game. We didn't find out that it was going to be Saturday until late afternoon Tuesday, which is not good really, to be fair.
Meanwhile, Celtic continue their title charge on Sunday as they head north to face Ross County. Georgios Giacomakis back in the squad, but Josip Juranovic will be sidelined for the next couple of weeks.
Ross County have been fantastic, especially second half of the year. Melky's done an enormous job with them to get them into the top 6. We knew that the last time we played them at home. So we're going to be ready for. It's going to be a tough opponent, but again, as I said, we've been pretty consistent in our performances. We just need to continue that.
Elsewhere this weekend, St Mirren start their first match in the bottom 6 away to managerless Hibs as they look to avoid the risk of a relegation scrap. Aberdeen welcome Livingston. The bottom 2 face off as Dundee take on St Johnstone, and it's Dundee United versus Hearts. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
On to snooker news now, and Stephen Maguire is just 2 frames away from securing a place in the quarterfinals of the World Snooker Championships. He leads Zhang Jingtao by 11 frames to 5. And that, folks, is just about all the smoke for me tonight. I'm waiting to find a towel. Good night.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Well, it's obviously pouring in Kilmarnock. Let's see what it's going to be elsewhere. Here's Philip.
Hello, good evening. Well, overall it has been a pretty pleasant week, and many of you have been out and about taking photos and sending them in to us. It's continuing to stay settled as we head across the weekend, so if you do manage to take more beautiful pictures, then do send them in to us on Instagram using the hashtag STV Snaps, and I'll try and share a few of them next week. In the meantime, let's take a look at the forecast.
The outlook for the day is calm and settled. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, once again, it has been another lovely day for many of us across much of the country. Lots of sunshine on offer. Now, as we head through this evening and overnight, there's very little change. It remains settled and dry. Through the early hours of tomorrow morning, we do start to see some low-level cloud just spreading in through the central belt. Temperature-wise, not dropping too far. There is still a bit of a breeze, so that's keeping temperatures between low to mid-single figures. For most towns and cities, around 5 or 6 degrees Celsius. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, we've still got high pressure dominating our weather, so it will be another lovely day to come. The only difference is there will be some medium to high level cloud around, so some of that sunshine through the course of the afternoon could be quite hazy at times. In the best of any brightness further west, we'll be seeing temperatures reaching highs of 16 or 17 degrees Celsius. It will be feeling slightly cooler further east though, as we've got that onshore breeze coming in off of the North Sea. Now, looking ahead to Sunday, we start to see temperatures coming down a few degrees. For the likes of Fort William and Glasgow, we have been seeing highs of around 17 or 18 degrees Celsius. By Sunday, highs of 14. Again, the best of any brightness will be further west. Elsewhere, there will be some thicker cloud around. Now, looking ahead to the start of next week, Monday, Tuesday, that cloud will continue to increase and the temperatures will continue to come down. By Tuesday, we'll be seeing highs of 13. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
Now, the ferry fiasco means we've been hearing a lot about problems with ships in Inverclyde, but it's not all bad. Cruise ships are starting to return to Greenock in large numbers with a new facility to accommodate them.
Yes, a 95,000-tonne MSC Magnifica cruise ship was there today, bringing more than 3,000 passengers and giving local tourism a big boost, as Ollie Dickinson has been finding out.
A welcome sight on Scotland's shores. Cruise ships, their passengers and the pounds in their pocket a big business. This is the MSC Magnifica and its return is being celebrated on the Clyde and beyond.
Oh, this is a wonderful day for the port. I mean, we're back in action now, and I think we're all prepared to enjoy it. It's wonderful for the community, it's wonderful for the people, and we had a lot of passengers this morning. People will, of course, go to Glasgow and to Edinburgh, but in a place like Inverclyde, I mean, it's so wonderful, and a really good day like this. There's lots to see in Inverclyde.
Scotland's cruise ports had been operating in choppy waters during the COVID pandemic. Lockdown left ships locked out or locked up, going nowhere fast. But that's all about to change, with the port here in Greenock predicting a bumper year.
So there'll be double what we had last year, so it should be somewhere between 75 and 80 ships. It's a fluid market because there's still a bit of uncertainty, and anywhere up to 150,000 passengers coming through this terminal. There was no ships in 2020, and then last year we had 41, but we had 107 ships booked on our books before the COVID restrictions kicked in.
But with restrictions lifted, the passengers and crew now have the opportunity to travel onward to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Loch Lomond and beyond.
Oh, it's beautiful. People are so friendly here. Very, very friendly. And we have been at the museum, James Watt Museum. It was very interesting for us. And the weather is great. Scotland is so beautiful. We love it.
It's been the first day for us in Scotland. Before we've been in Ireland, which has also been the first time in Ireland. And no, it's not your first time. You've been in Edinburgh.
Oh, yes. Edinburgh, yes. Oh, that's really, really beautiful and amazing.
And there is more good news for Inverclyde. Ships now dock at a bespoke pontoon with a state-of-the-art ferry terminal building also on the way.
Yeah, I think we've made some significant changes to bring more cruise ships into Greenock. For example, behind us here we've got the new cruise jetty, which is dedicated just for cruise ships, so we're not relying on space at the container terminal. And behind the camera there you've got the new terminal building that's going to be open in July. So we've really got a proper offering to offer cruise customers when they come to Greenock.
If all goes to plan, it should be plain sailing for one of Scotland's biggest tourist industries in 2022. Ollie Dickinson, STV News, Inverclyde.
And finally, did you hear the one about the cat that went missing, became a pet in a jail, hitched a ride in a container to an oil rig, was spoiled rotten in the offshore kitchen and was helicoptered back to the mainland?
Well, his name is Dexter, better known as One-Eyed Joe to the officers at Peterhead Prison who've been feeding him for the past 5 years. He was scanned and reunited with his original owners this morning. And guess what? He's gone missing again.
That's a cat that likes a good life, eh?
One of us 9 for sure. That's all from us tonight. From all of us here, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.